Now, this question asks us to do a lot of sub-questions, and I hope you read the question carefully and see them. The average return for each stock, which is the first thing it asks us to do, is very easy. We simply add up the values given for A and divide by 5. And we do the same for B. Or in this case, it's a very simple average. And we get the same amount, 18.9%, for each of them. The second one asks us to find the average return for the portfolio for each year. Now, sometimes students miss this, but I hope you don't miss it. So we were given 5 years worth of information, returns for each one of the stocks, and we are told that the composition of the portfolio is the same for each year, 50% A, 50% B. So we write down the general equation for finding the returns on a portfolio, the summation here of the weight times the return for the individual stocks. This is the general equation, that's why we have I here. In this case, I is just 2 because we have only 2 stocks, but it could have been any number. So I have worked out the first 2 years, year 2 and year 3. And there we have them. I have set out the other 3 and you work them out yourself for practice. When you're done with year 6, you would have answered question 2 and have found the average return for the portfolio for each year. Then they want you to find, as the third part of the question, the return for the portfolio for the period 02 to 06. We have already found the average return for each one of the stocks A and B to be 18.9%. We were already told that the weight, the relative amount of each, is 50-50. So this equation becomes this. Weight is 0.5 of each, 50-50. The return for the period for each happens to be the same. And so the return for the portfolio is simplicity itself, 18.9% for the period. And we would have had, when we have worked out all of these, the return of the portfolio for each year. The other part of the question now asks us to find standard deviation and variance for each one. I have only worked out A, you work out B. Only the numbers change, the methodology is the same. So that shouldn't be any difficulty for you, but it gives you valuable practice to do it yourself. So we have the years and we have the returns for each year for A. These are given in the problem. We find the average return for A, which we already knew from the beginning, but we find it here to be the same. K bar. This is the average return for the period. So we notice that the individual years' returns are all different from each other, and they are also different from the average. So we want to find how do the yearly returns vary. So we set up another column, the return minus the average return, and we take away 18.9 from each of these, just as it is stated here, and we get these numbers. Then you know the methodology. We square these. This is the method adopted to eliminate the minus signs. So by squaring these numbers, we end up with these numbers. As you can see, this column here is just this column squared. So we end up with these numbers, not a minus sign in sight, which is what we wanted. Then we sum them, we get this number. The variance now, sigma squared, is found by dividing this number by n minus 1, where n is the number of values we have. In this case, 5 values. So n minus 1 becomes 4. So we divide by 4 and we get our variance as 361.48. The standard deviation, simplicity itself. The relationship between standard deviation and variance is a very simple one. The standard deviation is the square root of the variance. We already found the variance, so we simply square root it and we get our standard deviation of 19.01. So for stock A, we have found both our variance, 361.48, and our standard deviation, 19.01. You work out stock B's variance and standard deviation. A question asks us to do something else as well, which is to find the standard deviation and variance for the portfolio. I can't do that one for you because I didn't do the other 3 values. But you would have done the average the return for each year, so you would have had all 5 values for 2002, 3, 4, 5, and 6 for the portfolio for every year. Those 5 values would then go here, and you treat it exactly as you would treat stock A or stock B. The method is the same, only the values change, and you work through. So this, finding this standard deviation and variance for stock A, is the template for you to use to find those values for stock B as well as for the portfolio. Thank you.